Good evening. Welcome to the next part of Interview with the Vampire. So, if you are ready, then I will begin. I want to burn the doll shop. Madeline told us this. She was feeding to the fire in the grate the folded dresses of that dead daughter, white lace and beige linen, crinkled shoes, bonnets that smelled of camphor balls and sachet. It means nothing now, any of it. She stood back, watching the fire blaze, and she looked at Claudia with triumphant, fiercely devoted eyes. I did not believe her, so certain I was, even though night after night I had to lead her away from men and women she could no longer drain dry, so satiated was she with the blood of earlier kills, often lifting her victims off their feet in her passion, crushing their throats with her ivory fingers, as surely as she drank their blood. So certain I was that sooner or later this mad intensity must abate, and she would take hold of the trappings of this nightmare, her own luminescent flesh, these lavish rooms of the Hotel Saint Gabriel, and cry out to be awakened, to be free. She did not understand it was no experiment, showing her fledgling teeth to the gilt-edged mirrors. She was mad. But I still did not realize how mad she was, and how accustomed to dreaming, and that she would not cry out for reality, rather would feed reality to her dreams, a demon elf, feeding her spinning wheel with the reeds of the world, so she might make her own web-like universe. I was just beginning to understand her avarice, her magic. She had a doll-maker's craft, from making with her old lover over and over the replica of her dead child, which I was to understand crowded the shelves of this shop we were soon to visit. Added to that was a vampire's skill and a vampire's intensity, so that in the space of one night, when I had turned her away from killing, she, with that same insatiable need, created out of a few sticks of wood, with her chisel and knife, a perfect rocking chair, so shaped and proportioned for Claudia, that seated in it by the fire, she appeared a woman. To that must be added, as the nights passed, a table of the same scale, and from a toy shop a tiny oil lamp, a china cup and saucer, and from a lady's purse a little leather-bound book for notes, which in Claudia's hands became a large volume. The world crumbled and ceased to exist at the boundary of the small space, which soon became the length and breadth of Claudia's dressing room. A bed whose posters reached only to my breast buttons, and small mirrors that reflected only the legs of an unwieldy giant when I found myself lost among them. Paintings hung low for Claudia's eye, and finally, upon her little vanity table, black evening gloves for tiny fingers, a woman's low-cut gown of midnight velvet, a tiara from a child's masked ball, and Claudia, the crowning jewel, a fairy queen with bare white shoulders, wandering with her sleek tresses among the rich items of her tiny world, while I watched from the doorway, spellbound, ungainly, stretched out on the carpet, so I could lean my head on my elbow and gaze up into my paramour's eyes, seeing them mysteriously softened for the time being by the perfection of this sanctuary. How beautiful she was in black lace, a cold, flaxen-haired woman with a Cupid doll's face and liquid eyes, which gazed at me so serenely and so long that, surely, I must have been forgotten. The eyes must be seeing something other than me as I lay there on the floor dreaming, something other than the clumsy universe surrounding me, which was now marked off and nullified by someone who had suffered in it, someone who had suffered always, but who was not seeming to suffer now, listening, as it were, to the tinkling of a toy music box, putting a hand on the toy clock. I saw a vision of shortened hours and little golden minutes. I felt I was mad. I put my hands under my head and gazed at the chandelier. It was hard to disengage myself from one world and enter the other, and Madeline, on the couch, was working with that regular passion, as if immortality could not conceivably mean rest. Sewing cream, lace to lavender satin for the small bed, only stopping occasionally to blot the moisture tinged with blood from her white forehead. I wondered, if I shut my eyes, would this realm of tiny things consume the rooms around me? And would I, like Gulliver, awake to discover myself bound hand and foot, an unwelcome giant? I had a vision of houses made for Claudia, in whose garden mice would be monsters, and tiny carriages and flowery shrubbery become trees. Mortals would be so entranced and drop to their knees to look into the small windows, like the spider's web it would attract. I was bound hand and foot here, not only by that fairy beauty, that exquisite secret of Claudia's white shoulders and the rich luster of pearls, bewitching languor, a tiny bottle of perfume, now a decanter from which a spell is released that promises Eden. I was bound by fear that outside these rooms, where I supposedly presided over the education of Madeleine, erratic conversations about killing and vampire nature, in which Claudia could have instructed so much more easily than I, if she had ever showed the desire to take the lead, that outside these rooms, where nightly I was reassured with soft kisses and contented looks, that the hateful passion which Claudia had shown once and once only would not return, that outside these rooms I would find that I was, according to my own hasty admission, truly changed. The mortal part of me was that part which had loved, I was certain. So what did I feel then for Armand, the creature for whom I'd transformed Madeleine, the creature for whom I had wanted to be free? A curious and disturbing distance, a dull pain, a nameless tremor. Even in this worldly clutter, I saw Armand in his monkish cell, saw his dark brown eyes, and felt that eerie magnetism. And yet I did not move to go to him. I did not dare discover the extent of what I might have lost, nor try to separate that loss from some other oppressive realization, that in Europe I'd found no truths to lessen loneliness, transform despair. Rather, I'd found only the inner workings of my own small soul, the pain of Claudia's, and a passion for a vampire who was perhaps more evil than Lestat, for whom I became as evil as Lestat, but in whom I saw the only promise of good in evil, of which I could conceive. It was all beyond me, finally. And so, the clock ticked on the mantel, and Madeleine begged to see the performances of the Théâtre des Vampires, and swore to defend Claudia against any vampire who dared insult her. And Claudia spoke of strategy, and said, "Not yet, not now." And I lay back, observing with some measure of relief Madeleine's love for Claudia, her blind, covetous passion. Oh, I have so little compassion in my heart or memory for Madeleine. I thought she'd only seen the first vein of suffering. She had no understanding of death. She was so easily sharpened, so easily driven to wanton violence. I supposed in my colossal conceit and self-deception that my own grief for my dead brother was the only true emotion. I allowed myself to forget how totally I had fallen in love with Lestat's iridescent eyes, that I'd sold my soul for a many-colored and luminescent thing, thinking that a highly reflective surface conveyed the power to walk on water. What would Christ need have done to make me follow him like Matthew or Peter? Dress well, to begin with, and have a luxurious head of pampered yellow hair. I hate myself, and it seemed, lulled half to sleep as I was so often by their conversation, Claudia whispering of killing and speed and vampire craft, Madeline bent over her singing needle. It seemed then the only emotion of which I was still capable, hatred of self. I love them. I hate them. I do not care if they are there. Claudia puts her hands on my hair, as if she wants to tell me, with the old familiarity, that her heart's at peace. I do not care. And there is the apparition of Armand, that power, that heartbreaking clarity, beyond a glass it seems. And taking Claudia's playful hand, I understand for the first time in my life what she feels when she forgives me for being myself, whom she says she hates and loves. She feels almost nothing. It was a week before we accompanied Madeline on her errand to torch a universe of dolls behind a plate glass window. I remember wandering up the street away from it, round a turn into a narrow cavern of darkness where the falling rain was the only sound. But then I saw the red glare against the clouds. Bells clanged and men shouted, and Claudia beside me was talking softly of the nature of fire. The thick smoke rising in that flickering glare unnerved me. I was feeling fear, not a wild, mortal fear, but something cold, like a hook in my side. This fear. It was the old townhouse burning in the Rue Royale, Lestat in the attitude of sleep on the burning floor. Fire purifies, Claudia said, and I said, no, fire merely destroys. Madeline had gone past us and was roaming at the top of the street, a phantom in the rain, her white hands whipping the air, beckoning to us, white arcs of white fireflies. And I remember Claudia leaving me for her, the sight of wilted, writhing yellow hair as she told me to follow. A ribbon fallen underfoot, flapping and floating in a swirl of black water. It seemed they were gone, and I bent to retrieve that ribbon, but another hand reached out for it. It was Armand who gave it to me now. I was shocked to see him there, so near, the figure of Gentleman Death in a doorway, marvelously real in his black cape and silk tie, yet ethereal as the shadows in his stillness. There was the faintest glimmer of the fire in his eyes, red warming the blackness there to the richer brown. And I woke suddenly as if I'd been dreaming, woke to the sense of him, to his hand enclosing mine, to his head inclined as if to let me know he wanted me to follow, awoke to my own excited experience of his presence, which consumed me as surely as it had consumed me in his cell. We were walking together now, fast, nearing the Seine, moving so swiftly and artfully through a gathering of men that they scarce saw us, that we scarce saw them. That I could keep up with him easily amazed me. He was forcing me into some acknowledgement of my powers, that the paths I'd normally chosen were human paths I no longer need follow. I wanted desperately to talk to him, to stop him with both my hands on his shoulders, merely to look into his eyes again, as I'd done that last night, to fix him in some time and place, so that I could deal with the excitement inside me. There was so much I wanted to tell him, so much I wanted to explain, and yet I didn't know what to say, or why I would say it, only that the fullness of the feeling continued to relieve me, almost to tears. This was what I'd feared lost. I didn't know where we were now, only that in my wanderings I'd passed here before, a street of ancient mansions, of garden walls and carriage doors and towers overhead, and windows of leaded glass beneath stone arches. Houses of other centuries, gnarled trees, that sudden thick and silent tranquility, which means that the masses are shut out. A handful of mortals inhabit this vast region of high-ceilinged rooms. Stone absorbs the sound of breathing, the space of whole lives. Armand was atop a wall now, his arm against the overhanging bough of a tree, his hand reaching for me, and in an instant I stood beside him, the wet foliage brushing my face. Above, I could see story after story, rising to a lone tower that barely emerged from the dark, teeming rain. "Listen to me. We are going to climb to the tower," Armand was saying. "I cannot. It's impossible. You don't begin to know your own powers. You can climb easily. Remember, if you fall, you will not be injured. Do as I do. But note this. The inhabitants of this house have known me for 100 years and think me a spirit. So if by chance they see you, or you see them through those windows, remember what they believe you to be, and show no consciousness of them, lest you disappoint them or confuse them. Do you hear? You are perfectly safe." I wasn't sure what frightened me more, the climb itself, or the notion of being seen as a ghost, but I had no time for comforting witticisms, even to myself. Armand had begun, his boots finding the crack between the stones, his hands sure as claws in the crevices, and I was moving after him, tight to the wall, not daring to look down, clinging for a moment's rest to the thick carved arch over a window, glimpsing inside, over a licking fire, a dark shoulder, a hand stroking with a poker, some figure that moved completely without knowledge that it was watched. Gone. Higher and higher we climbed, until we had reached the window of the tower itself, which Armand quickly wrenched open, his long legs disappearing over the sill, and I rose up after him, feeling his arm out around my shoulders. I sighed despite myself as I stood in the room, rubbing the backs of my arms, looking around this wet, strange place. The rooftops were silver below, turrets rising here and there through the huge, rustling treetops, and far off glimmered the broken chain of a lighted boulevard. The room seemed as damp as the night outside. Armand was making a fire. From a molding pile of furniture, he was picking chairs, breaking them into wood easily, despite the thickness of their rungs. There was something grotesque about him, sharpened by his grace and the imperturbable calm of his white face. He did what any vampire could do, cracking these thick pieces of wood into splinters, yet he did what only a vampire could do, and there seemed nothing human about him. Even his handsome features and dark hair became the attributes of a terrible angel who shared with the rest of us only a superficial resemblance. The tailored coat was a mirage, and though I felt drawn to him, more strongly perhaps than I'd ever been drawn to any living creature, save Claudia, he excited me in other ways, which resembled fear. I was not surprised that, when he finished, he set a heavy oak chair down for me, but retired himself to the marble mantelpiece and sat there warming his hands over the fire, the flames throwing red shadows into his face. I can hear the inhabitants of the house, I said to him. The warmth was good. I could feel the leather of my boots drying, feel the warmth in my fingers. Then you know that I can hear them, he said softly, and though this didn't contain a hint of reproach, I realized the implications of my own words. And if they come, I insisted, studying him. Can't you tell by my manner that they won't come? He asked. We could sit here all night and never speak of them. I want you to know that if we speak of them, it is because you want to do so. And when I said nothing, when perhaps I looked a little defeated, he said gently that they had long ago sealed off this tower and left it undisturbed, and if in fact they saw the smoke from the chimney or the light in the window, none of them would venture up until tomorrow. I could see now there were several shelves of books at one side of the fireplace and a writing table. The pages on top were wilted, but there was an inkstand and several pens. I could imagine the room a very comfortable place when it was not storming, as it was now, or after the fire had dried out the air. You see, Armand said, you really have no need of the rooms you have at the hotel. You really have need of very little. But each of us must decide how much he wants. These people in this house have a name for me. Encounters with me cause talk for 20 years. They are only isolated instants in my time, which mean nothing. They cannot hurt me, and I use their house to be alone. No one of the Théâtre des Vampires knows of my coming here. This is my secret. I had watched him intently as he was speaking, and thoughts which had occurred to me in the cell at the theater occurred to me again. Vampires do not age, and I wondered how his youthful face and manner might differ now from what he had been a century before, or a century before that. For his face, though not deepened by the lessons of maturity, was certainly no mask. It seemed powerfully expressive, as was his unobtrusive voice, and I was at a loss finally to fully anatomize why. I knew only I was as powerfully drawn to him as before, and to some extent the words I spoke now were a subterfuge. But what holds you to the Théâtre des Vampires? I asked. A need, naturally. But I've found what I need, he said. Why do you shun me? I never shunned you, I said, trying to hide the excitement these words produced in me. You understand, I have to protect Claudia, that she has no one but me. Or at least she had no one until Madeline came to live with you. Yes, I said. But now Claudia has released you, yet still you stay with her, and stay bound to her as your paramour, he said. No, she's no paramour of mine. You don't understand, I said. Rather, she's my child, and I don't know that she can release me. These were thoughts I'd gone over and over in my mind. I don't know if the child possesses the power to release the parent. I don't know that I won't be bound to her for as long as she... I stopped. I was going to say, for as long as she lives. But I realized it was a hollow, mortal cliché. She would live forever, as I would live forever. But wasn't it so for mortal fathers? Their daughters live forever, because these fathers die first. I was at a loss suddenly, but conscious all the while of how Armand listened, that he listened in the way that we dream of others listening, his face seeming to reflect on everything said. He did not start forward to seize on my slightest pause, to assert an understanding of something before the thought was finished, or to argue with a swift, irresistible impulse the things which often make dialogue impossible. And after a long interval, he said, "I want you. I want you more than anything in the world." For a moment, I doubted what I'd heard. It struck me as unbelievable, and I was hopelessly disarmed by it, and the wordless vision of our living together expanded and obliterated every other consideration in my mind. I said that I want you more than anything in the world, he repeated, with only a subtle change of expression, and then he sat waiting, watching. His face was as tranquil as always, his smooth, white forehead, beneath the shock of his auburn hair, without a trace of care, his large eyes reflecting on me, his lips still. "You want this of me, yet you don't come to me," he said. "There are things you want to know, and you don't ask. You see Claudia slipping away from you, yet you seem powerless to prevent it, and then you would hasten it, and yet you do nothing. I don't understand my own feelings. Perhaps they are clearer to you than they are to me. You don't begin to know what a mystery you are," he said. "But at least you know yourself thoroughly." "I can't claim that," I said. "I love her, yet I am not close to her. I mean that when I am with you, as I am now, I know that I know nothing of her, nothing of anyone. She's an era for you, an era of your life. If and when you break with her, you break with the only one alive who has shared that time with you. You fear that, the isolation of it, the burden, the scope of eternal life. Yes, that's true, but that's only a small part of it. The era, it doesn't mean much to me. She made it mean something. Other vampires must experience this and survive it, the passing of 100 eras. But they don't survive it, he said. The world would be choked with vampires if they survived it. How do you think I come to be the eldest here or anywhere? He asked. I thought about this, and then I ventured, they die by violence? No, almost never. It isn't necessary. How many vampires do you think have the stamina for immortality? They have the most dismal notions of immortality to begin with, for in becoming immortal, they want all the forms of their life to be fixed as they are and incorruptible, carriages made in the same dependable fashion, clothing of the cut which suited their prime, men attired and speaking in the manner they have always understood and valued. When, in fact, all things change except the vampire himself, everything except the vampire is subject to constant corruption and distortion. Soon, with an inflexible mind, and often even with the most flexible mind, this immortality becomes a penitential sentence in a madhouse of figures and forms that are hopelessly unintelligible and without value. One evening, a vampire rises and realizes what he has feared, perhaps for decades, that he simply wants no more of life at any cost, that whatever style or fashion or shape of existence made immortality attractive to him has been swept off the face of the earth, and nothing remains to offer freedom from despair except the act of killing. And that vampire goes out to die. No one will find his remains. No one will know where he has gone, and often no one around him, should he still seek the company of other vampires. No one will know that he is in despair. He will have ceased long ago to speak of himself or of anything. He will vanish. I sat back, impressed by the obvious truth of it, and yet, at the same time, everything in me revolted against that prospect. I became aware of the depth of my hope and my terror, how very different those feelings were from the alienation that he described, how very different from that awful, wasting despair. There was something outrageous and repulsive in that despair. Suddenly, I couldn't accept it. But you wouldn't allow such a state of mind in yourself. Look at you, I found myself answering. If there weren't one single work of art left in this world, and there are thousands, if there weren't a single natural beauty, if the world were reduced to one empty cell and one fragile candle, I can't help but see you studying that candle, absorbed in the flicker of its light, the change of its colors. How long could that sustain you? What possibilities would it create? Am I wrong? Am I such a crazed idealist? No, he said. There was a brief smile on his lips, an evanescent flush of pleasure. But then he went on simply, but you feel an obligation to a world you love, because that world for you is still intact. It is conceivable your own sensitivity might become the instrument of madness. You speak of works of art and natural beauty. I wish I had the artist's power to bring alive for you the Venice of the 15th century, my master's palace there, the love I felt for him when I was a mortal boy, and the love he felt for me when he made me a vampire. Oh, if I could make those times come alive for either you or me, for only an instant, what would that be worth? And what a sadness it is to me that time doesn't dim the memory of that period, that it becomes all the richer and more magical in light of the world I see today. Love? I asked. There was love between you and the vampire who made you. I leaned forward. Yes, he said. A love so strong he couldn't allow me to grow old and die. A love that waited patiently until I was strong enough to be born to darkness. Do you mean to tell me there was no bond of love between you and the vampire who made you? None, I said quickly. I couldn't repress a bitter smile. He studied me. Why then did he give you these powers? He asked. I sat back. You see these powers as a gift, I said. Of course you do. Forgive me, but it amazes me how in your complexity you are so profoundly simple. I laughed. Should I be insulted? He smiled, and his whole manner only confirmed me in what I'd just said. He seemed so innocent. I was only beginning to understand him. No, not by me, I said, my pulse quickening as I looked at him. You're everything I dreamed of when I became a vampire. You see these powers as a gift. I repeated it. But tell me, do you now feel love for this vampire who gave you eternal life? Do you feel this now? He appeared to be thinking, and then he said slowly, why does this matter? But went on, I don't think I've been fortunate in feeling love for many people, or many things. But yes, I love him. Perhaps I do not love him as you mean. It seems you confuse me, rather effortlessly. You are a mystery. I do not need him, this vampire, any more. I was gifted with eternal life, with heightened perception, and with the need to kill, I quickly explained, because the vampire who made me wanted the house I owned and my money. Do you understand such a thing? I asked. Ah, but there is so much else behind what I say. It makes itself known to me so slowly, so incompletely. You see, it's as if you've cracked a door for me, and light is streaming from that door, and I'm yearning to get to it, to push it back, to enter the region you say exists beyond it, when in fact I don't believe it. The vampire who made me was everything that I truly believed evil to be. He was as dismal, as literal, as barren, as inevitably, eternally disappointing as I believed evil had to be. I know that now. But you are something totally beyond that conception. Open the door for me. Push it back all the way. Tell me about this palace in Venice, this love affair with damnation. I want to understand it. You trick yourself. The palace means nothing to you, he said. The doorway you see leads to me now, to your coming to live with me as I am. I am evil with infinite gradations, and without guilt. Yes, exactly, I murmured. And this makes you unhappy, he said. You, who came to me in my cell, and said there was only one sin left, the willful taking of an innocent human life. Yes, I said. How you must have been laughing at me. I never laughed at you, he said. I cannot afford to laugh at you. It is through you that I can save myself from the despair which I've described to you as our death. It is through you that I must make my link with this 19th century and come to understand it in a way that will revitalize me, which I so desperately need. It is for you that I've been waiting at the Théâtre des Vampires. If I knew a mortal of that sensitivity, that pain, that focus, I would make him a vampire in an instant. But such can rarely be done. No, I've had to wait and watch for you, and now I'll fight for you. Do you see how ruthless I am in love? Is this what you meant by love? Oh, but you'd be making a terrible mistake, I said, looking him in the eyes. His words were only slowly sinking in. Never had I felt my all-consuming frustration to be so clear. I could not conceivably satisfy him. I could not satisfy Claudia. I'd never been able to satisfy Lestat. And my own mortal brother, Paul, how dismally, mortally, I had disappointed him. No, I must make contact with the age, he said to me calmly, and I can do this through you, not to learn things from you, which I can see in a moment in an art gallery, or read in an hour in the thickest books. You are the spirit, you are the heart, he persisted. No, no. I threw up my hands. I was on the point of a bitter, hysterical laughter. Don't you see? I'm not the spirit of any age. I'm at odds with everything, and always have been. I have never belonged anywhere with anyone, at any time. It was too painful, too perfectly true. But his face only brightened with an irresistible smile. He seemed on the verge of laughing at me, and then his shoulders began to move with this laughter. But Louis, he said softly, this is the very spirit of your age. Don't you see that? Everyone else feels as you feel. Your fall from grace and faith has been the fall of a century. I was so stunned by this that for a long time I sat there staring into the fire. It had all but consumed the wood and was a wasteland of smoldering ash, a gray and red landscape that would have collapsed at the touch of the poker. Yet it was very warm and still gave off powerful light. I saw my life in complete perspective. And the vampires of the théâtre? I asked softly. They reflect the age and cynicism which cannot comprehend the death of possibilities, fatuous, sophisticated indulgence in the parody of the miraculous, decadence whose last refuge is self-ridicule, a mannered helplessness. You saw them, you've known them all your life. You reflect your age differently. You reflect its broken heart. This is unhappiness. Unhappiness you don't begin to understand. I don't doubt it. Tell me what you feel now, what makes you unhappy. Tell me why for a period of 7 days you haven't come to me, though you were burning to come. Tell me what holds you still to Claudia and the other woman. I shook my head. You don't know what you ask. You see, it was immensely difficult for me to perform the act of making Madeline into a vampire. I broke a promise to myself that I would never do this, that my own loneliness would never drive me to do it. I don't see our life as powers and gifts. I see it as a curse. I haven't the courage to die, but to make another vampire, to bring this suffering on another, and to condemn to death all those men and women whom that vampire must subsequently kill. I broke a grave promise, and in so doing... But if it's any consolation to you, surely you realize I had a hand in it. That I did it to be free of Claudia, to be free to come to you. Yes, I realize that. But the ultimate responsibility lies with me, I said. No, I mean directly. I made you do it. I was near you the night you did it. I exerted my strongest power to persuade you to do it. Didn't you know this? No? I bowed my head. I would have made this woman a vampire, he said softly, but I thought it best you have a hand in it. Otherwise you would not give Claudia up. You must know you wanted it. I loathe what I did, I said. Then loathe me, not yourself. No, you don't understand. You nearly destroyed the thing you value in me when this happened. I resisted you with all my power when I didn't even know it was your force which was working on me. Something nearly died in me. Passion nearly died in me. I was all but destroyed when Madeline was created. But that thing is no longer dead. That passion, that humanity, whatever you wish to name it. If it were not alive, there wouldn't be tears in your eyes now. There wouldn't be rage in your voice, he said. For the moment, I couldn't answer. I only nodded. Then I struggled to speak again. You must never force me to do something against my will. You must never exert such power, I stammered. No, he said at once. I must not. My power stops somewhere inside you, at some threshold. There I am powerless. However, this creation of Madeline is done. You are free, and you are satisfied, I said, gaining control of myself. I don't mean to be harsh. You have me. I love you. But I'm mystified. You are satisfied? How could I not be? He asked. I am satisfied, of course. I stood up and went to the window. The last embers were dying. The light came from the gray sky. I heard Armand follow me to the window ledge. I could feel him beside me now, my eyes growing more and more accustomed to the luminosity of the sky, so that now I could see his profile and his eye on the falling rain. The sound of the rain was everywhere and different, flowing in the gutter along the roof, tapping the shingles, falling softly through the shimmering layers of tree branches, splattering on the sloped stone sill in front of my hands. a soft intermingling of sounds that drenched and colored all of the night. "Do you forgive me for forcing you with the woman?" he asked. "You don't need my forgiveness. You need it," he said. "Therefore, I need it." His face was as always utterly calm. "Will she care for Claudia? Will she endure?" I asked. "She is perfect, mad, but for these days that is perfect. She will care for Claudia. She has never lived a moment of life alone. It is natural to her that she be devoted to her companions. She need not have particular reasons for loving Claudia. Yet, in addition to her needs, she does have particular reasons. Claudia's beautiful surface, Claudia's quiet, Claudia's dominance and control. They are perfect together, but I think that as soon as possible they should leave Paris." "Why?" "You know why. Because Santiago and the other vampires watch them with suspicion. All the vampires have seen Madeleine. They fear her because she knows about them, and they don't know her. They don't let others alone who know about them." "And the boy, Dennis? What do you plan to do with him?" "He's dead," he answered. I was astonished, both at his words and his calm. "You killed him?" I gasped. He nodded and said nothing, but his large, dark eyes seemed entranced with me, with the emotion, the shock I didn't try to conceal. His soft, subtle smile seemed to draw me close to him. His hand closed over mine on the wet windowsill, and I felt my body turning to face him, drawing nearer to him, as though I were being moved not by myself, but by him. It was best, he conceded to me gently, and then said, "We must go now." And he glanced at the street below. "Armand," I said, "I can't." "Louis, come after me," he whispered, and then on the ledge, he stopped. "Even if you were to fall on the cobblestones there," he said, "you would only be hurt for a while. You would heal so rapidly and so perfectly that in days you would show no sign of it, your bones healing as your skin heals. So let this knowledge free you to do what you can so easily do already. Climb down now." "What can kill me?" I asked. Again he stopped. "The destruction of your remains," he said. "Don't you know this? Fire, dismemberment, the heat of the sun, nothing else. You can be scarred, yes, but you are resilient. You are immortal." I was looking down through the quiet silver rain into darkness. Then a light flickered beneath the shifting tree limbs, and the pale beams of the light made the street appear. Wet cobblestones, the iron hook of the carriage house bell, the vines clinging to the top of the wall. The huge black hulk of a carriage brushed the vines, and then the light grew weak. The street went from yellow to silver and vanished altogether, as if the dark trees had swallowed it up, or, rather, as if it had all been subtracted from the dark. I felt dizzy. I felt the building move. Armand was seated on the windowsill looking down at me. "Louis, come with me tonight," he whispered suddenly, with an urgent inflection. "No," I said gently. "It's too soon. I can't leave them yet." I watched him turn away and look at the dark sky. He appeared to sigh, but I didn't hear it. I felt his hand close on mine on the windowsill. "Very well," he said. "A little more time?" I said, and he nodded and patted my hand as if to say it was all right. Then he swung his legs over and disappeared. For only a moment I hesitated, mocked by the pounding of my heart. But then I climbed over the sill and commenced to hurry after him, never daring to look down. And this is where we pause our tale. Thank you for letting me be a part of your journey to the land of sleep. If you've enjoyed our time together, countless other journeys await in previous episodes, ready to accompany you into the realm of dreams. So, as we close the book on our story this evening, I wish you a night filled with serene dreams and restful sleep. Good night, until we meet again in another tale. Rest well.